This is Group 12 Top Level Devils Phase 4 final video. We are going to be starting with the overview. In Phase 1 for the project overview, we added multiple pages on the JIRA for better organization. We started off with the functional requirements in a phase-like structure to walk through what a user in the program would be doing on a regular basis. In the example Figure 1, the requirements are focused on the first pieces of information needed from the patient that would need to be recorded. For the non-functional portion, we added traits focused on attributes the system would have and define what it would do. Figure 2 shows some of the variables and concepts we came up with. Lastly, we also added in the main questions we had for the customer on how the application would work. The user's guide was for describing specific workflows through the application that all of the users would have. It describes how to use all features of the app and states that there's error handling for the cases where information is entered incorrectly. Most users enter the interface and then according to their role will see a different login page. After successful verification, they are able to go to their accounts and do whatever task they have, which we will go into more depth in the Phase 1 portion. We included many screenshots for visual aid and referenced them as figures to help with this section's comprehension for the user. For the examples on the use cases and test cases, Figure 1 and Figure 2 show the login selection case. In Figure 1 use case example, we noted the different variables that would be in use, who would be interacting with the application at this stage, how things would be activated, and how the application would respond. In Figure 2 test case, we listed the different scenarios that a user would be in and how the application would potentially respond to it. In the Figure 3 full use case diagram, it started with the three main actors and branches out into separate paths for the application depending on what they choose to select. In the CRC diagrams, we focused on the identifying relationships between classes and what would be the response to different actions. They are listed under the responsibilities in the CRC Figure 1. The object identification was based off classes that we had planned for the actual product, and things we used inside the prototype code.
Next, we will discuss Phase 1 in more detail. Phase 1 consisted of two major sections, the project overview and the user's guide. We'll discuss the project overview first. Within the project overview, we broke it down into three sections to help us better understand how to get started and what we needed to do in our project. For our team in particular, we did the following: a specification review, requirements, and the user's guide. Let's jump into how we broke down the specifications listed in the project description. For the specification review, we cherry-picked the most important topics notated in the project description. On screen, you'll see that we picked out the project theme, the main objective, and the necessary functional features for the patient, nurse, and doctor. This will move us into our requirements. Our requirements had two sections, functional requirements and non-functional requirements. For our functional requirements, we had a flow, patient portal, doctor portal, and a nurse portal. For the flow of visit, this is where we mapped out potential visit scenarios for a patient. This includes instances where a patient's vitals are taken, their reason for visiting is recorded, and their physicals are examined. Next is our patient portal. The patient portal is where necessary functions related to the patient will reside, and the same thing will go for the doctor and the nurse portal respectively, with slight modifications to accommodate for security. Next, we have our non-functional requirements. This is where our product requirements and organizational and external requirements will reside. For product requirements, we wanted to have the app be usable and accessible in a JavaFX-based application for patients and medical professionals alike. We wanted to have a strong security system for accounts that has good data integrity. Finally, we also wanted to design this application to be minimal, sleek, and modern. Organizational and external requirements included the security system to be compliant with HIPAA policies, in addition to a use case where the app could be used outside of the clinic if necessary. Next up is our user's guide. The user's guide will start with a general login. The general login will have the respective logins for the doctors, nurses, and patients. They will be given options to either quit the application or get help from a short README file on how the program works. For this page, how it works is you'll have panes and buttons. The panes will separate the visual attributes, and the buttons will be the functional attributes. Next, we have the patient's features. The patient should be able to log in, create an account, view their account information, view their visit history, and get help from the doctor should they need it. Next is a nurse. Like the patient, the nurse should be able to log in, take vitals, and then submit the vitals information to the doctor. Finally, we'll have the doctor. Just like the nurse and the patient, the doctor should be able to log in, choose their patients, view the patient's vitals from the nurse's notes, take notes, and message the patients once they need to.
Hello, my name is Tanish, and this is the Phase 2 summary. In the Phase 2, we had these deliverables, use case diagrams, CRC diagram, initial class diagram, test plan, and initial prototype code. Here, we have the use case diagram that we created for Phase 2. The use case diagram goes over all the use cases that we thought we aligned with the project description. These use cases are very thorough and provide a blueprint for what a hospital visit would look like. All use cases have appropriate notations that relate to the use cases. As you can see here, we have the extend, there's the include as well, and there's various others. This diagram can be used to create a class diagram, which we will go over next. Here we have the class diagram, initial class diagram that we created for Phase 2. There are in total 8 classes. These classes are as follows. Login selection. This is the class that provides the user input to which login portal they want to go to. There will be 3 buttons, one labeled patient login, the second labeled doctor login, the third labeled nurse login. And whenever the user clicks on either one of them, they will go to the respective patient or doctor or nurse login classes. In the patient login class, we also have a create account class. Whenever in the patient login, there's a button, whenever they click on the sign up button, they will go to the create account class. In the create account class, they would be able to add their information and click submit, and that would create our account in our database. The patient login, doctor login, and nurse logins are authentication classes that are there to authenticate the user if they're really what they tell us what they are. And once they are authenticated, they would then be redirected to our patient main or doctor main or a nurse main. The main classes are there for all the functionalities that were stated in the project description. As for example, for the main project patient main, there's going to be 3 tabs. One is for the account information. The second is for the history of the patient, the history of their visits. The third is for the messaging portal. For the doctor main, there's a drop-down menu for all the patients that they are assigned to. And once they click on it, they will show all of the history of the patient as well as the message portal. If there's any messages, they can reply on that. The main purpose of the nurse main class is for the nurse to enter the vitals and all the important information about the patient when they first come in to the hospital. And once the nurse is finished with all that, they can click a submit button, and that would enter that data into our data base.
Moving into Phase 3, we were now fully equipped to handle the code implementation. As a team, we had been actively using Jira for all of our team management to track progress. This tool allowed us to delegate work amongst the team, as well as view our progress against previous benchmarks. We were able to schedule our Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, and now Phase 4 deadlines using this scheduling tool, as well as all of the information that was needed for the phase completion. Following our weekly outline and documentation on the phase requirements, we were able to stay on track for timely delivery. Here, we can see a progress report of how we were performing compared to previous sprints. The different colors represent what needed to be done, what was in progress, and when we completed it. We saw a generator report of these sprints, and overall, it was one of the primary organizational tools over the course of the project. Being able to see how we performed kept us on track. Continuing with parts 2 and 3 of Phase 3, we move into GitHub and the code implementation. GitHub and our code development, we began early on, and it began around Phase 1. As you can see with our main branches, we also see that throughout the course of the project, it was used to produce our main deliverables. Using GitHub during Phase 3 not only gave us a top-down view of our code, but it gave us many opportunities to evaluate our progress and to even reduce or normalize our code. Now, as we see here, our code was broken into 3 main modules. On the top left, we see the database and the database that was used was MySQL, which was located in our upper level source directory. All of these files represent the queries as well as building the schema that allowed us to track the messages, logins of the patients, and logins of the doctors and nurses. Secondly, we'll see in the top right, we have our FXML and JavaFX user interface files, which were also located in their own source directory. We'll see that there are different pages for logging in, selecting who you are, creating an account, or managing information. Lastly, we have the main controller files in the bottom photo, and these are the main driving controllers, also located in the source directory, which allowed us to use observer events. These controllers subscribed to and had the notifications when an event occurred, such as a button press or entering into a text field. Management of these controllers is what allowed the program to work. All three of these modules were valuable to the completion of the phase, as well as its code functionality. Furthermore, using GitHub allowed us to work as a team and equally maintain our code and resolve any conflicts. These were very apparent by GitHub's implemented merge, pull, and conflict features. In addition, all three of these modules needed to actively cooperate with one another. Therefore, using a sequence diagram of known interactions, we can mitigate later risks and propagate our further successes.
Of the project and worked on our necessary requirements and user's guide. Then, going into phase 2, where we really dove into the specifics on how we wanted the project requirements to translate into an application, all the way up to fully implementing the project in phase 3. Looking back, we believe we did great in implementing the lessons we learned from class. For instance, here's what we thought went great for us. We were consistent, and we had great teamwork and communication. For consistency, we always went through with weekly team meetings, had some consistent work output, and gave each other some great internal feedback and input. In terms of communication and teamwork, we scheduled our tasks at the beginning of each weekly meeting and summarized them at the end of meetings as an effective way to keep track of the team's goals, which were dynamic throughout the project. Additionally, we also had collaborative software that was routinely tested to make sure that it was working as intended. We ensured to make our versions fully up to date and matching, and then whenever there were commits or pulls made on GitHub, we would communicate that effectively. This concludes our CSE 360 project presentation. Thank you.